Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Welcome to the September 8th Planning Board meeting. First on the agenda is Suez Water. Mike, I don't believe you had any comments, did you?
I did not.
And Rich the same, correct?
Did not either.
And Pat?
Okay, you have a resolution approval for you this evening. This is a type 2 action, so it's simply a site plan approval. And you have a resolution.
Any comments from the board?
None for me, Mr. Chairman.
Someone make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as stated. The Planning Board of Town of Carmel, 22, TAC 18 on 8 September. Tax map 75.20, TAC 1, TAC 16, Suez Water, New York, Chateau Wells version.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Next on the agenda, Kiwi Country Day School, 825 Union Valley Road. Mike, you had some comments, I believe?
What was the timeframe that the property with one-family dwelling on 7717-131 was added to the plan? I don't see that on the previous approved site plan, so I don't know if that's a totally extra lot or not. What is the use of the existing one-family dwelling? What is the use associated with the 4 yurts, the metal apparatus, and the frame apparatus? They're all on that additional parcel. I'm talking about the 31 parcel. The interior traffic pattern now crosses over onto 7717-131. Is this on or near the septic or well? They're not shown on there, where, the locations of them. Permits are required for all of the sheds on 7717-131, and I should meet with the engineer and discuss some of the uses. If you have a few minutes, it would help out a lot, because it's very confusing out there. There's a lot going on the site, so I think we need to discuss that.
Thanks, Mike. I think Rich had some overlapping comments. I think he thought so also.
Rich had some comments,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so unclear what the yurts are being used for. Needs Mayapack Fire Department review. He's questioning if there's grading necessary for this. Are there any public improvements necessary? And my comments, Mr. Chairman, are similar. So as you know, in the past, a lot goes on this site, and it's always been a challenge for us to keep track of exactly the improvements that are being proposed for any given season. So over the years, they have developed sort of this master plan that they have been continually updating, so we kind of know what's going on the site. And that's been working well. So we have 2 issues that are before us with this application, the 4 yurts. So we don't know what they are, what they're being used for, what kind of structure they are. So that has to be clarified. That's the easy part. The other part of this is that the applicant in their own application indicated that there are also other minor departures from the original plan without specifying what they are. In looking at the plan, it wasn't clear what they are. So that's the issue that we always need to clean up. What's changed since the last time they've been before you? The second drawing that was submitted was a vehicle maneuvering plan, which implied there's some change to the vehicle circulation pattern. So that whole element needs to be clarified. What are they changing, and what are the yurts being used for?
Thank you, Pat. Before I ask for any comments, maybe you can take us through this entire project, because there is some unknowns. I'm sure everyone on the board.
It's been a while, too.
Yeah, you could ask answer some of our questions before we ask them, I'm sure.
Sure. Is this what I'm
Please
speaking
introduce
into?
yourself also.
Yes. Adam Thyberg, Inside Engineering, Surveying, Landscape Architecture, PC. Here representing Kiwi Land Co. LLC and Dasmus Land Co. LLC for the amended site plan that's before you tonight. The properties are, as was mentioned, 825 Union Valley Road and 31 Blossom Lane, better known as Kiwi Country Day Camp. So the reasons for this application for amended site plan, there are a few things, and they were kind of touched on by your consultants. There's a few. One of them is that some of the current ground conditions deviate somewhat from the currently approved site plan, including some items that were never enacted or built out, and then some modifications to some of the apparatus on the site. The new ownership of the camp very much want to do this the right way, and they're looking to tidy up the site plan and clean up any deviations from what currently exists in the currently approved site plan. Additionally, as was mentioned, the applicant is seeking approval for the 4 proposed yurt structures, which, for the board's benefit, you can see are here. There's 4 circles on the 31 Blossom.
What are the dimensions of those?
Those are, I believe they were 30-foot diameter. They are, if you're not familiar with a yurt, it is a temporary tent or teepee-like structure. And what they're going to use them for is their camp programming during their summer operations. Specifically, whether it's, art or music or whatever it might be, it'll be for camp programming, those structures. With regard to other,
To clarify, so in inclement weather or rain, they do stuff in it. There's not physical facilities inside each.
there's no physical facilities. It's essentially, a yurt is essentially a large tent. So yes, they would be taking their activities. They may have some dedicated indoor activities, as they do in some of the other structures that you're aware of on the site, where they do specific activity. This is the art building, and this is the Lego building, and all of that.
But there's not a kitchen in one of them?
There
or
is
something
not.
like
This
that?
is not any kind of permanent structure with that kind of facilities. No, this is essentially a large tent where they'll conduct some of their programming. With regard to, as was discussed, the departures from the current approved site plan, I think the most obvious of which is that previously there had been proposed parking lot. Take this with me. There had previously, and as part of the currently proposed, or the currently approved site plan, there had been shown a proposed parking lot out in front of this building here. The purpose of that previously proposed parking lot was to service an also previously proposed preschool that was going to occupy part of this building. That preschool is no longer part of it's not happening, it never happened. That is no longer part of how they plan to operate going forward. And so, of course, they're not looking to build the parking lot that was associated with that potential use. It's currently shown as an existing playground, and the plan is to keep it as the existing playground that exists there now. That's probably the most obvious change from the approved site plan. Additional to that is there have been some changes to some of the apparatus. A few things have shifted. There's a ropes course, which is essentially just some platforms up on the hill. You can see those dotted in around here. Some of the turns and some of the tighter areas of the gravel drive have been opened up a little bit, just to service improved circulation for pickup and drop off. And there's also been a metal gate that's been installed at the entrance to the 31 Blossom driveway, which currently is just a simple metal gate. It's like a brownish orange in color. That's proposed to be replaced with a more decorative wooden gate that'll match the white post and rail style fencing that they have along the Union Valley frontage. And that's kind of a summary of the things that have changed somewhat from the original site plan, of course, with the addition of the proposal for the 4 yurts.
And those are seasonal, correct?
Yes, yeah, the whole camp is essentially seasonal. They operate, they actually just closed, obviously with school starting this week, they closed, it was last week or the week before for the season, and they reopen when school ends,
The
essentially.
yurts will stay up all year, or will they come down after the season?
I think the jury's out on that. They may, it mainly comes down to the manufacturer's specification. If they can stay up, they may not be able to stay up all year. They may or may not take them down during the winter.
If they do come down, they'd have to go back in the same place.
Correct.
Just make sure they're aware,
Understood.
they can't just
Yep.
move them randomly around.
Yep, understood.
And just curious, Mike, if it's a permanent structure year-round, that probably has a different building code requirement.
Absolutely, and that's why I was saying if we could meet to discuss some of these structures, their timeframes. They need permits for all the sheds that they have on there. I assume they're part of the camp, the sheds?
Yeah,
On the house lot?
on the house lot, Yeah, I think they are. So there's one shed that we were showing that was clearly in the setback, and we were showing that to be moved out of the setback. Our understanding to this point was that the sheds were all pre-existing, part of the current site plan, but I'm hearing that that's not the case.
Adam, can you add a drawing which is existing and proposed? All
Mm-hmm.
of those minor adjustments, I think you're showing the proposed location of the current location. The gravel driveway, how did it change? Is it?
Sure, yeah, we can
need
suggest
to
that, yep.
Get a
Mike-
handle on that.
Mike, wouldn't we, if this is coming forward for these yurts, wouldn't we want to go back and look at the shed and get that located properly?
They
It's
are
not-
located properly. The question is whether or not they are already legal. So if they didn't get permits when they built them, they need them now.
But Adam was just saying that they take that as being pre-existing and not,
The house isn't pre-existing, so the sheds aren't.
okay.
So if the yurts come down in the sun, in the winter, where will they store?
Like I said, it's like a tent, so
Yeah.
the structure, there's a, I believe, a wooden structure to it that holds it up.
Right.
And then the facing of it is just fabric, so that, my understanding is that just gets rolled up like anything else, and it comes apart fairly readily.
Would you be able to provide the board with like product data, cut sheets on
Yep.
yurts? Just so we can get a better sense of,
Yeah, Adam, what makes it a yurt compared to a tent? Is
I
it
think
just
it's
the
just
product?
I think it's the size and the shape, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a yurt is generally, a tent can obviously vary in shape and size to some degree. A yurt is a large tent, and it has a specific round shape with a somewhat, not a flat roof, but it's not like a completely pitched
Yeah,
roof.
I get, and it's made of goat skin in Mongolia. I understand that. But how does it, what are we talking about here? So, to Mike's point, sit with Mike so we can
Yep.
get a better understanding of that.
Questions from the board?
Actually, I have a question. Just, it's more a clarification. This goes back to Gary's time. Kiwi came before us, and there was talk about an ice skating, not an ice skating rink, a roller rink or something that was going to be put back there. Is that not happening? That's one question. The other question was, I know that there was the conversation over 31 Blossom being taken part of Kiwi. So has that happened? Are these two different parcels?
Yeah, so with regard to your first question, I will follow up when we return with regard to the question about the skating rink. The 31 Blossom, the way that operates now is that there's a couple of things. There's an easement that exists, and you can see it on the plan here. This dashed line, within this area, it's shown as an existing playing field use easement, so that allows for that particular use in that location. And from what I understand from the applicant, there is a long-term lease that is held by Kiwi Land Co., which is the owner of the larger piece. There's a long-term lease of 31 Blossom for their full use of that site, in addition to the easement that allows the playing field to cross the property line.
How many acres is that complex? Do you know offhand?
I should know that, and actually I can tell you. 14.7 all in.
Thank you.
That's with both lots?
Yes.
Any other questions for Adam? Adam, I think we'll follow up, Mike, follow up and clarify many of our questions, and then possibly see you back in 2 weeks.
Okay, great, yeah, we'll definitely touch base with Mike, and we'll see what we can do about also bringing the applicant potentially for the next meeting, and maybe even with a meeting with Mike in the interim. And we'll bring it, just throw it over my shoulder and haul it in.
As Anthony mentioned, the cut sheets on the yurts, but any
Yep.
pictures, anything that we can see what it's
A
actually
visual
gonna
will
look
help,
like?
yeah, for
Would be
sure.
Great.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good, thank you.
Next on the agenda, 910 South Lake Boulevard LLC, amended site plan. Mike?
In the cover letter that you submitted, you talked about going to the ZBA. You just have to wait for this board to refer you to ZBA, just so you're aware. Copy of this plan needs to go to the fire department still. I don't know if they've commented yet. I haven't seen it yet. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 variances required from the zoning board. Again, how much fill is going to be removed or added, or are you just doing a cut fill, or how you changing the slopes there? Architectural consultant needs to be involved with this process. This is a redevelopment. It's going to really set the bar for that whole area over there, so it's something very important for us. And the ECB will be a referral once you get a little bit closer as well. We just aren't ready yet to send you there, in my opinion.
Will someone read Rich's comments, please?
No, because Rich has got a lot of comments here, Mr. Chairman.
Can you summarize them?
But there's a primary issue that he's expressed in the comments, Mike, which relates to the water usage. So we have an issue that Rich is pointing out with respect to the total capacity of the water district, which is at a fixed level of 245,000 gallons. Currently, we're at 221. This project would utilize 14.4. So basically, this project would utilize just about all of the remaining water capacity of that water district. That's not counting for any other uses or any of the other existing uses where water capacity has already been addressed. So that's a significant issue, Mike, and you have to think about how to deal with that. There are ways to deal with that.
Okay.
But at this point, that represents an impediment moving forward until we hear how that can be addressed appropriately. And Rich has, again, a lot of detailed comments with respect to the site engineering issues, which I think you've seen some of those before.
Yeah, I believe I did some of those as well. I try to answer as much as I could outside of the DOT, the DEP and that stuff. I try to deal with the details of the water, the backflows, all that stuff as much as I could.
Mike, you can get a copy of this tomorrow from Rose to
Yeah, sure.
start checking them off the list if you have them.
Yeah.
So just on my comments, Mr. Chairman, so since this was last before the board, and Mike did respond to some of those comments verbally, you at that time made it clear that we need definitive responses to provide it in writing. That hasn't yet been done for most of those comments, so we still need a lot of additional information. So if you remember, this is now the hotel proposal. It was, when it was originally presented to you, it was a 24-room boutique hotel. It's been changed. It's now 30 rooms. It's increased in the number of guest rooms, and it's a slightly bigger footprint, not much, but a little bit bigger. It's closer to the road, and it's a little bit wider, which represents a bit of a concern, if you remember, because the one-way in driveway, the one-way out driveway was tight. So now it's even a little more tight. That represents a concern. We've always had the concerns about where you drop off when you sign in, where do you park your car? If you park at the door, nobody can use those driveways, so there's a circulation concern associated with just the design and configuration of the project. As Mike indicated, there's a lot of variances that are necessary for this. We did request, and Mike, you touched on a bunch of them, the operational issues. Is this a boutique? Is it affiliated with a national company? Put it in writing, give us that information. You gave us some of that verbally at the last meeting, but a lot of that information is important. And the impacts of this building relate to how it's going to be used. So there's, for example, a banquet facility and a restaurant facility. Does that get used in addition to the guest rooms? Is it only for guests? Can you have a wedding going on and a fully occupied hotel? If you can, we've got a lot going on that site, so that becomes a concern. And it's tight with parking right now. With the additional room, you need a parking variance, so he doesn't have enough parking for the amount of stuff going on the site. So it's tough. There's a lot going on there, so we need definitive answers to all of those things. Mike mentioned it, the architectural consultant, it's imperative they get involved in this. If this happens the way it's proposed, critical piece in the downtown, and it's got to be right. So I think we need to engage them as soon as we can with respect to this, and that's all my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Last time this was before the board requested locations of other hotels by this owner, photographs, address.
And I
Was
think
that
Mike
information
indicated they
ever-
had them in
'cause I haven't seen
Florida. They hadn't been submitted.
Okay, so I personally can't move forward with this until I see that.
I
That's just
join you
my
on
opinion.
that. I agree 100%. And I think we also wanted to see more information on the financial plan for this. We'd want to know that this is going to be financially successful.
I thought we submitted that. thought that was
What was it?
submitted a while ago, the
Financial plan for
The
this?
business plan, I think, Pat, you started that conversation, I think Bob included, you wanted to see some kind of business plan you
Yeah.
mentioned.
Yeah, so I don't remember seeing that, Mike. If you did, I don't remember seeing that.
Okay. I'll repackage that and get that to everybody.
And again, it's now been adjusted. It was a 24-unit hotel, now it's a 30-unit hotel.
Right.
Does that change the metrics or the marketing or any of that information?
Yeah, one thing that jumps into my mind immediately is when you were last here and we spoke about this project, and one concern I think all of us voiced was the ingress and egress, as well as the maneuverability in the parking lot. So now you come back with another structure that's now even wider, so that ingress and egress is even more difficult. And when you look at the map you gave us with the turning radius, I mean, for instance, the truck picking up the refuse, it can turn around if the parking spot is empty. If not, it just seems like instead of trying to work with us and try to resolve some of the issues we brought up, you came back with a plan that's more aggressive and I think personally raises more issues.
Well, just to touch on what Pat mentioned, the structure actually did not get bigger. I modified the shape, but it's actually a little tighter, because before we had closer to 14-foot setback, now I'm closer to a 15-foot plus setback. So I actually made it a little bit tighter to get a little bit more room, so then trucks and cars can maneuver a little bit better.
It's not what the plan showed, Mike. It was showing us about 2 or 3 inches on one side further, so we'll take a look.
Yeah.
Plus, bigger in 24 rooms to 30 rooms did happen, right?
Yeah, no, the increase in rooms did happen.
Was that by making rooms smaller?
No, we didn't. We actually modified the plan to make it more laid out, nicer. So we found models of other hotels, and we followed what some other hotels have and the amenities, and that's how we got the room layout.
Has the height increased?
The height did increase because we have now we have the stairwell tower, and we have 2 elevators. So and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, that comes into the height as well. So that's where there's some increase in the height because of the 2 towers.
How many employees do you anticipate on any given day?
We're anticipating about 10 employees.
Okay, so 10 employees, and then you're supposed to have 1 parking spot per room, so that's 30 spots, and then 10 employees.
So we're looking to hire local people to come and work, and one of the things is they would carpool, so we're anticipating about 3 parking spaces for those employees to come and work.
Well, I mean, I have to defer to these guys. I mean, is that, Mike, is that an acceptable way to calculate?
I'm gonna look right now again, hold on.
And Ray, to that point, that goes to the issue we raised earlier. So if there's a wedding there as well, that's not necessarily reflected in our off-street parking requirements.
Well, we're not anticipating having weddings here,
So-
because
so-
the conference area is just for conferences like professional associations coming in, having a small meeting for that day, or what, 20 people, whatever. This, again, is close to Villa Barone, so we're hoping to pick up, when they have weddings, we can help them out.
So because this is so
Yeah.
close.
you have that proposed roof deck up top,
Well,
But that's what,
very easy to have
that
a
would have to be
after-party
reflected in an agreement. So
Right.
just Mike saying it, I'm not doubting you, but we need a commitment, a written agreement, a condition of approval that reflects we will never do this, we will not exceed a certain capacity, whatever it might be.
But this issue you mentioned banquets, you're not going to have banquets, but you're going to have daytime conferences. So it's the same parking issue. Somebody comes in with 20 people for a daytime conference, where they're going to park if you've got guests.
Well, typically what happens with conferences, and Pat, you can help me out with this, I know as far as the engineers and the land surveyors, we all go to a hotel. So we're picking up the rooms, picking up the parking spaces, and using the conference area. So it's not like you have 20 people in their rooms, and then you're having another 20 people come in.
But will you rent out conference space to people who are not paying guests?
No. I have the owner here with me this evening, so.
But Mike's right, I mean, that's usually that you get a room rate when you go to the conference.
Yeah, I
in the hotel.
understand
So it's likely that they can manage that, but it requires more than Mike saying, I promise to manage it that way.
No, it has to be written out in a report, yes.
And what are the plans with as Anthony pointed out, the rooftop, because I see a bar and then a seating area.
Right, so what the concept that the owner had with that we developed was, since that's the side that faces the lake, it would be nice if any of the guests want to go upstairs, someplace to smoke, hang out, relax, talk, and then we figured a quote-unquote bar area, just somebody's thirsty, you want to get something to drink or whatever.
But
You know?
is that something that would be open to the public?
No, it's an amenity
I
for
was just
the
gonna ask,
hotel.
I can see that as a wonderful attraction, to your credit, to the neighborhood want to go to the rooftop bar. I would, you know, so it's not gonna be open to the public, just for residents only?
No, I mean, for amenities to get more guests to come, to the hotel sometime.
That would have to be included in there.
Yeah, again,
Same thing with the bar area inside, the bar lounge area,
this is,
the
this
pool,
use
all
has the
that.
potential to fit wonderfully here. The problem is it the right site to fit all of this on? That's a question, and I can't emphasize enough, this use would use up the rest of the water for this district. That means all of the recommendations that we're gonna look at in the comprehensive plan to do things, nothing else can be done. This uses up all the basically all the water.
Yeah, I think
So there has to be some mitigation involved to address that.
And you really need to get a hold of this list, you know, referrals to the fire department, things like traffic study. I don't believe we've done that. As a DOT commented on this at all, it's too soon for them, but we were concerned with them, with you being off of 6N, State Road. There's a lot of showstoppers here that you really need to start addressing, I believe.
Well, in preliminary talks with the DOT, they like the idea of having an ingress and an egress.
Good.
Not all as one, two separate.
That's
They
good.
felt it was easier on the 6N, and it was better for the site, especially since that area of the site is the more narrow area.
I think the fire department's the one you really gotta, before you go any forward with your layout.
Okay, do I submit directly to them? How
How do we
we?
usually handle that? We
Okay.
can take care of that.
Okay.
I think that would be the biggie.
Yeah, because if the garbage trucks can't turn around, what about EMS and fire equipment, right?
I just want to say that I'm concerned about the size in general, for the lot and for the height. This is going to be the biggest thing we have downtown, as far as I can tell. And I'm scratching my head as to how that's going to look. Certainly, we would have the architect help us on the review, but this is a very big structure.
I mean, the biggest thing with this.
And I'm having difficulty with that.
Sure. I mean, the biggest thing with this is there's a 12-foot difference in elevation from 6N to the back. So, I mean, just doing a two-story structure stuck right in the middle, it's going to look odd. You know, that's why we tried to embellish it. And you know, we took into account the New England-style architecture.
You know, we've mentioned several times about the, using up the capacity of the water district. Is a well for this site an option?
Yes, I was gonna mention that.
It's almost, if you,
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
think that
mention,
was
we
something
can,
that you
we
should
we
look
would look
into.
at doing a well, or even trying to split up, so then, you know, maybe just partial use for fire sprinkler systems on the town system, and the well will be for, you know, the hotel use. You know, we could do something like that.
Okay, we have several pages of typewritten notes here.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get a copy of them from Rose and
Sure.
work with Rich and Mike and the team.
Yeah, a lot of this was kind of, you know, we met with staff. That's how we pushed, I don't know if you guys remember, we pushed the building more forward to be in line with the buildings, you know, average between the two buildings on either side. So, you know, that kind of gained a little room in the back for the maneuverability with the cars.
I would start getting some feedback, as we've all mentioned, from other agencies, fire department, for instance, DOT.
Okay.
And the code requires 1.25 parking spaces per unit.
I'm sorry,
For
Mike, can you say that
hotel?
again?
Code requires 1.25 parking spots per unit. So you're still a little light.
Okay.
how about for the employees?
That's the 2.5.
Oh, that's, okay.
I assume, I mean, that's,
That's probably what
The assumption is that takes into account employees and.
Gotcha, the 1.2, okay.
So that's roughly 3 and change parking spaces, what I figured.
How many units you have?
30.
7.
25%.
8
Oh, so
spots.
it's like 8 spots, yeah. Okay.
You're about 7 spots short, based on that calculation.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, please get up to the microphone though, because, introduce yourself so you can hear it.
Hi, Lou Cardello, how are you?
Great.
So, what's currently on the site right now is obviously an eyesore, you know the site, right? It's probably one of the least desirable properties in all of town of Carmel. I've owned it for a few years, it cash flows really well. It's obviously not something that I'm proud of owning, but I bought it with a redevelopment in mind, which originally was apartments, because that's what I do, apartment development, and I own a hotel in Deerfield Beach, Florida. So when I originally, you remember this project was originally, I think, 20 apartments, which zoning doesn't allow for apartments, there's no zoning in town of Carmel for apartments. So the concept was that it's zone commercial, this is like an as-of-right project. I understand the challenges that we're having with it, but with that being said, since this is like the gateway coming around that corner on South Lake, and the first thing you see is that, like I call it the Ken Anthony Plaza, and this property is right next to it. And then with the whole redevelopment of the downtown with the new parking lot, I mean, I understand there's challenge with parking on the site itself, but there's gonna be a lot of parking downtown, everything's changing, so I don't see parking as an issue. I'm not saying, I'm going against what you're saying, but I don't see parking as the biggest issue. My biggest challenge at this point is, what do you wanna see on this site? It's a little bit of a narrow site, it's a funky little property, it has dynamic views of Lake Mayapack. That's why I thought the apartments or condos would have been great. That was a challenge, so I went to a hotel. Just asking blatantly, what would you want to see on this site? Like if you could pick anything. Because I'm in the development game. I like the hotel concept, but since this hit the Mayapack news, because one of the reporters put it out there, and then they found out that I owned it. And that's why they come to the first meeting, because I want people to know I own the property, but now a lot of people do. They are enthralled with the idea of the hotel. Not just more for the nightly rate, but I am also a real estate broker. I own Keller Williams Real Estate in town. And we get a lot of people who just need like more short-term rentals as well. For like, they come and visit their kids for the weekend, or come for 3, 4, 5 nights. So it's not just people gonna come in transient every day, but there's a concept of transient people coming in nightly, people staying a week, people staying 3 nights, but not to the effect of as an apartment. So with the challenges of the site and water usage, I guess, is something I didn't even realize till today, and there is a well on the property as well. What would you want to see on the property?
I think it's a great idea. I think we need something like this, as you said, in this part of town and in, for the uses that you said. I think it's a great idea. I would like to see a nice boutique hotel. It's just a matter of the size and whether or not we can make it work in that small piece of property.
Right.
But I wouldn't want to see anything else than that. I
Do you
think it's a
that
great
hotel
thing.
that would be needed in this?
Yes.
In this area?
That's my personal opinion, yes.
Okay. So keep,
I'm still trying to get wrapped around the infrastructure problems. You know,
Yeah.
6N, the water, we just found out about, I think, this week also, when Rich notified us. So I think I want a successful business there, obviously, because it is a key spot for redevelopment.
yeah.
And the use today, this being much nicer than the use today, as you mentioned. But we get some infrastructure hurdles.
Yeah, I understand all that. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to go against any of that. I'm just trying to see, are we going on the right track with the hotel to try to rework some of the challenges that we're having with it to make it work. So the amenities on site, such as the indoor pool, the rooftop bar, that conference room, I'm just trying to create amenities that will drive people to come to the hotel so it has no chance to fail. So it's like, if you don't have those things, would they go? Because I checked this, Danbury and Peachtree are the 2 closest places, and they both have conference centers. The pool, I think, is a great concept because I'm trying to get people in there for the winter. So I used to go down to Arrowwood down in Rive in the winter with my family before it closed, and we used to spend the weekends there, just because it was nice in the winter, something to do with a pool. I think that's needed for the guests. And the rooftop bar concept, I think, is just great for guests to come there, gives them a nice amenity to overlook the lake. So these are all concepts to drive traffic to the site and to have people stay there instead of picking another place to go, not for outdoor people to use it.
Could you shrink it down so that it meets the parking requirements?
That's a question for Mike, but if that is one of the biggest hurdles,
Well, it's always a hurdle because you don't have other options. Everybody owns the land around you.
right.
So
But what about Swan Cove and everything else?
nobody's walking a quarter mile to Swan Cove to stay at a hotel.
And there's-
Sorry.
And there's not supposed to be overnight parking in Swan Cove.
Say it again?
There's not supposed to be overnight parking in Swan Cove.
Oh, it's not, okay.
But nobody's going to walk that far to go to a hotel.
Well, okay. I do, I own, I do. I walk from my lakefront property over near Ferry Island all the way into town and into,
To go to a hotel, I'm saying.
well, okay, so I also own a piece of lakefront on the lake that I'm going to be giving to this hotel or selling it to the hotel to give, which is not part of this plan because they're two separate properties, but I'm going to have a piece of lakefront that the people can actually use and go sit there and just enjoy looking at the lake. I think they will, but I don't know. I'm younger maybe older people wouldn't do it, I don't know. It's just options for people, that's all. But maybe you are correct, Mike. I mean, there's a sidewalk in front of the place. It's not like I'm like on some side road. It's main Route 6. There's always people walking up and down Route 6.
No, I understand, but if you have your bags and your kids with you, I don't mean to keep
Okay,
arguing, but
okay.
you're not going to walk down Route 6 dragging a bag and a kid with you.
Well, if not, I'm going to create VIP shuttle service. But yes, point well taken.
service.
Yeah.
As an outsider, I have a suggestion.
You need to,
The town allows it. The car lifts like they have in the city where you can have the employees park up on top and then you have the bottom ones for your guests. I don't know.
I know that I need to have them, and then we actually looked at that, and if that's something I could do, that's something that we would look into, but I'm not gonna have any employees park on site regardless. They're gonna work for us, they're not gonna park on site, they're gonna have to figure it out. And it's gonna be part of the rules of working for us. And I know that I need employee parking as part of the plan, but, as part of them being hired, they're not gonna be able to park on site.
okay, Lou, thank you for
All
your
right,
time.
thank you.
Work on some of
Thank
these issues. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
I think underground parking is the way to go. Not expensive to go down there.
Next on the agenda, Yankee Land Development, Berry Hill Road and Owen Drive. Mike, I don't believe you had any comments, right?
This is the preliminary approval extension or whatever,
Yes.
extension, so I have no comments on this.
Pat, can you summarize Rich's, please?
Can. So he had comments with the original preliminary plan that were conditions of approval, but as you know, this is now changing with the subdivision to create the two separate lots. So keeping the preliminary approval while he gets the amended subdivision is the right thing to do here.
And yourself, any comments?
No comments on it.
So this is a 6-month extension, I believe.
6-month extension on preliminary approval.
Good evening. Why are you requesting the 6-month extension?
We actually thought we were coming in for the two-lot subdivision, but this is the only thing they put us on the agenda for, so I'm actually here also to ask the board if we can get on the agenda to continue what we started
They did.
at the last meeting.
Which was a 2-lot
Right, we were
subdivision.
gonna split this into
Yeah.
two 7-lot subdivisions instead of one 14-lot.
So I spoke to the engineer on this as well, so that's absolutely correct. And I don't recall why, at the last meeting, we didn't advance them to final approval and schedule a public hearing. There were no major objections to this at all. So with this request, they would still have to submit the new plan and pay the fee for final approval. But if they do that, there's no reason why you couldn't schedule a public hearing for the next meeting and move him over to final approval.
And that's final on the 2-lot subdivision.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so you could do that subject to submitting the proper documentation and paying the fee.
Okay.
So you can do that in two different motions. One is the extension on the preliminary, and the second would be to schedule a public.
Should we do them in any particular order? So I'll make a motion to grant the extension to the preliminary subdivision approval for 76.15-1-12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And do we have a motion to schedule a public hearing?
I'll make a motion to schedule a public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ed has everything that you need?
And I talked, so he knows what he needs to see.
Perfect.
See you in 2 weeks, I guess. When's the next meeting? You get that detail from Rose.
So I guess, yeah, we'll hear from Rose on that, right? Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Rose distributed meetings from July 14th and July 27th. Bob, I believe you reviewed them.
I've read them, made some minor comments. I move approval of both sets of minutes, subject to those changes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.